So Craig, one of the first things that a lot of people ask me is immediately they get into the equipment. What kind of equipment should I buy? What kind of helmet should I buy? And it used to be in the old days, we had to fashion everything ourselves. We were making stuff out of motorcycle helmets and we were just doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And nowadays, the choices are crazy. And now with the smaller cameras and the GoPros and the really small video cameras, I mean, where does someone start? Where does someone really start to look at their equipment? I know that we're doing big wave photography and a lot of people are jumping the smaller helmets, but your larger helmet you use for everything. How is that possible? Why do you choose your equipment, and what's the pros and cons of it?
Well, obviously, I have a large helmet because I like to carry a lot of equipment. And sometimes some of the cameras I'm carrying are big cameras. I'll shoot 35mm motion picture cameras or even some large ultra high definition cameras, and you need a large stable platform to support that. I like the full face helmet because it gives you that extra support that you need to keep that equipment stable. And it's very important that it's not shaking around or moving on your head. That's really important to me. And like I said, this is a heavy load. This is a big load. I wouldn't recommend starting out with something like this. It's best to start out with a smaller, more compact helmet and start with one camera at a time. Nowadays, the video cameras have evolved into these really small cameras. I have this one actually sitting on a riser here so that it sees over the top of the camera I have on the front if in fact I mount a camera up there. That's what this is. But I mean, you can see these cameras are small. They're pretty low profile. They're not a huge hazard on your head, but yeah, that's where you start. A smaller helmet's the best place to start with a small camera, or even nowadays you can get a GoPro or a Contour that gives you a fantastic image, especially if you're just wanting to use your video to transfer to DVD or YouTube or for the computer. Those cameras are fantastic for that. I'd recommend going that direction.
So would you say that getting into a flat top bigger helmet like that is more of an intermediate move?
Yeah, I would say that stepping up to a bigger helmet is more of an intermediate to advanced camera person. I mean, it opens up a lot of options for you, as you can see, to carry more equipment. But obviously with more equipment, there comes some other hazards with carrying the extra weight and the extra snagging hazards. I mean, anytime you start adding anything to you, whether it's on your head or your person or your foot, those are just safety concerns you need to make sure you're comfortable with and ready to deal with any situation that comes up.
What kind of helmet is that?
This is a Bonehead Flat Top Pro. I think it's probably the best off-the-shelf skydiving professional helmet. Like I said, it provides a large platform, many different configurations for my cameras. It's full face, so it gives me that nice stable platform to work with.
So you like that rear entry, that the way that it buckles in the back, it really clamps on your head and makes it a stable platform?
I prefer a helmet that has a rear entry type system because that allows you to have a solid piece all the way around the jaw, and that's where you're going to get any flexing or moving from your helmet. So the solid piece all the way around is what I prefer to help me have a more stable image.
And what about your usual cameras? What do you usually jump? What brand of cameras? What's your lens choice, and what type of video camera do you use, just in all-around stuff?
Well, primarily, just over the years, I found that the Sony products for video cameras seem to be my camera choice. They just seem to be more friendly in the freefall environment. And they give good, solid image, and the service is good, and there's a huge selection of them out there. Is why I like to shoot the Sonys. And the still cameras, I've been a Canon fan since I was 10 years old. So that's why I'm always shooting Canons. They have some of the best glass and some of the best options for your camera, whether you're helmet mounting or shooting on the ground.
And what models of Canons do you own and use?
Right now, I'm shooting with a Canon 7D and a Canon 5D. Both of these are considered professional cameras. The 5D is a full frame sensor camera. The 7D is a crop sensor, meaning it doesn't see as much of the image that the lens is providing to the camera.
Pros, cons?
Pros to the full sensor camera is usually you'll get a wider image with the particular lens you have on it, and it has bigger pixels on the image collector, and it gives you a sharper image and a lot less noise, which in digital,
A lot more information.
yes, a lot more information with a full frame camera, and it's a sharper image and it's a cleaner image. When we were shooting film, grain was the thing we talked about. You know, your pictures are grainy, kind of old looking. Well, we don't have grain so much in digital photography. We have pixelation and we have noise, and you have a lot less noise with a full frame sensor than you do with a smaller sensor.
When people ask me what kind of camera to get, you know, for their first SLR, you know, when they move up and they want like a real still camera, I always tell them to go for the Rebel XTI that Canon makes. It's lightweight, it's cheap, but yet really performs really well for the skydiving.
Yeah, I as well try to get new people when they want to start stepping into the still photography with a digital SLR. I like to recommend that Canon XTI because it's small, it's lightweight, has a beautiful image, very high resolution. I think that camera's like 18 megapixels, which is a lot of information, and it's plenty fast enough. I think it's 3 to 4 frames a second on the frame rate, and I think it's a great place to start, primarily because of its size. It's small and it's light, and obviously when we're putting equipment on our head, when we're putting equipment on our head, the camera being small and light is
weight
important.
is everything in it, just because on your neck and your body. What could you pull one of the cameras off and like maybe just hold it up the camera and discuss settings? Just a lot. That's another thing people ask me is, how do you set your camera? How do you do this? Because, you know, it can be pretty daunting for somebody who's just starting out with an SLR, all the settings, and they just don't know where to start. What do you do? What is an average setting for you?
Well, for me, I change things constantly. I mean, I'm a still photographer with a lot of knowledge on how the camera works. I like to change a lot. Whether it be my lens, my focal length, the camera settings, but just a good all-around setting. I like to put my camera in the TV mode for the Canons, which is time value. That's letting me select the shutter speed I want to shoot. And with digital photography, super important when you're doing action photography to have a good high shutter speed. So I'll set it in TV mode, select a shutter speed of 1/500th of a second or faster.
Really?
And then I'll let the camera select the f-stop. And that seems to be the kind of the rule of thumb for me, just generally. If I'm not trying to do anything special, put it in TV mode, set it at a 500th, try to keep my ISO speed low as it'll go to keep the noise down, and then I'm letting the camera pick the aperture. There's pros and cons with that as well. I mean, when you start letting the camera pick the aperture, now you have to realize how that affects your image. And we might go into more of that later, but now we're talking about depth
Now
of field.
it's getting complicated. So now how about the lens? How about focusing? Yeah, I hear all kinds of. Canon has 3 settings. It has the one shot, the AI, and the servo. And I've heard a lot of just bantering about which is which and why I use that. I mean, how do you set that to get the sharpest, like for general photography? You know, because sometimes you're going to be close to a subject, sometimes you're going to be far away, so it's really hard to manually set the lens. How do you do that? In the old days, we used to just go to infinity and back it off a little bit and tape it, and it never really seemed to do the right. Now the digital and the autofocus is just bomber.
The focusing systems on the new cameras are phenomenal. And autofocus, I don't use autofocus a lot unless I'm using a longer focal length lens. Like for me as a skydiver, that would be 35 to 50 millimeters. I don't know. Where was I? Talking about the autofocus system.
Autofocus, yeah.
Or I'll start over. The autofocus systems with the cameras today are really good. I mean, they have come so far in the 20 plus years I've been doing this. And when I shoot autofocus, it's because I'm usually using a longer focal length lens, which for me would be like a 35 to 50 millimeter. That's getting kind of a long lens for skydiving. Then I'll use autofocus because I don't have that depth of field range with that longer lens. So I'll put it in autofocus, and I like to use AI servo. It seems to be the autofocus mode that works best for me. And that's just over trial and error. I can't really give you the technical aspect of it, but just trial and error, taking thousands of images. I find AI servo works. But to be honest with you, primarily, I shoot manual focus. And I believe that you set up your camera before the skydive and you jump your setup. Same thing as dive the plan the dive the plan. It's the same with your camera. If I'm in manual focus and I set my camera to be, at 4 feet for best focus, I know I'm not going to pull the trigger unless I'm in there tight. If I know I'm going to be further away, I set that closer to infinity, and I'm not going to go in and get that close-up shot because I know I'm wasting my time. It's not going to be sharp.
Wow. I mean, what about somebody who's starting out? I mean, would it be easier for them to use autofocus? I mean, that just seems really hard to set it manually. Well, what can you say to take out the fear of setting it manually, and what are you looking for as far as the dials, gizmos, and gadgets on the lens?
Well, a lot of things I'm working for. The primary thing I'm thinking about in my photography is my best buddy is my depth of field. And I try to squeeze as much depth of field out as I can, which is the area of acceptable focus where you're going to have sharp.
For all you guys at home, that's related to your aperture.
Correct.
Read your manuals.
So I'm trying to get as much depth of field as I can. So that's really what I'm working with. And if you have an understanding on how hyperfocal distance works, that's a good way to give you an understanding of how close you can be, how far away you can be, and still be in acceptable focus.
Awesome.
But as a beginner, I think I would tend to use a wider angle lens, not extremely wide, because an extremely wide lens like 8 millimeter, that's just ridiculously wide. You have to be so close to your subject that the flying and skydiving aspect of it can be a little more challenging. But in general, I would say with a crop sensor camera, a 15 to 20 millimeter lens is a nice place to start. So you got a much bigger depth of field. The camera doesn't have to work so hard to focus if you choose to be in autofocus. I would put it in that autofocus mode, put it in AI servo, let her rip.
And then go ahead and experiment with the manual focus so you can start to learn that. Because most of the time when you're starting out, you're not getting paid. You're just out there shooting.
Well, I mean, digital photography is probably the best learning tool in photography since the start of it. I remember back in the day, we'd shoot film. I'd have to load my film, shoot it. The next day, take it to a photo lab. The day after that, go back to the photo lab, get it processed, look at my images, and then try and remember, or if I was smart enough to take notes on what my settings were. Now I take photographs, I plug the card into my computer. Not only do I instantly see the images, but all of the settings and all of the image information is right there in front of me. So I can learn from that immediately what the cause and effects of these settings changes are.
So one of the last pieces of equipment I wanted to ask you about is the ring sight. Like I don't want to jump without one. I love my ring sight, and tell us in your view the importance of the ring sight, why you jump it, and what it's used for.
Well, this is the ring sight here. It sits in front of my eye, and it gives me a reference to center of frame. And I don't like to jump without one either. I love my ring sight, but it does more than just give you a reference for center of frame. Because I've been doing this for so long, I have a real good idea of where I'm aiming my camera. I don't really have to rely on the ring sight for my aiming or finding center, so to speak. What I use the ring sight for primarily is to help me hold the image stable. I know when I'm looking through my ring sight, if that ring sight is dancing around my subject, that camera is moving around. So I use the ring sight to lock it in on a spot that I want right in the center of the frame and not let it drift around, and that's how I'm getting an extra stable image.
Wow, and what kind of, I know there's different ring sizes. I've seen just little rings. I've seen like, what is that and how does that differ?
I prefer to use a concentric ring sight because it's just obviously round circles. It gets smaller and smaller, and the center circle is very small. So that makes my center target much smaller. I know
Precise.
it's very precise. Some of the other ring sights are what they call a crosshair, and that center opening is quite big. So finding exact center is not quite as easy as having a very small object right in front of your eye to lay down on that center spot.
And the last thing is canopy choice. I know when I started doing camera, the more camera I do, I really started to have to give up some of the high performance stuff. I see a lot of young kids jumping super high performance stuff. It can be done, but my neck is just taking the toll from all the heavy stuff long ago. What would your recommendations be for someone who's actually looking to get into camera, wanting to do it for a living? What would you consider, canopy choices?
Well, like everybody else, I also used to jump high performance canopies, and I love flying high performance canopies. But as a professional cameraman, I don't recommend that as the proper tool. I now jump square parachutes. I personally jump PD Spectres. And not only do I jump square parachutes, but I jump parachutes with Dacron lines. And that gives me a big advantage when I'm hauling all this weight around because it helps actually cushion that opening. It gives me much softer openings with Dacron than with the standard microline that they put on most canopies today.
Thanks, man. Thanks for everything. We'll see you next time.
Well,